The Handkerchief by Great 78.
Chapter 140. After the Battle of Hogwarts. The following days, weeks and months of 1998 plodded by slowly, at times, and at other moments time seemed to fly by in a blur for Draco and his witch, as well as for everyone else recovering from the Battle of Hogwarts. In the early days that followed, Hermione moved into 12 Grimmauld Place with Potter and Kreacher, the house elf, whilst the Weasleys and Andromeda Tonks both offered her a place to live as she figured out everything that was to come. Neither of the houses felt right in the immediate days after the battle. Both households were overburdened with grief, and it felt wrong to her to intrude upon their hospitality during these trying times. Draco returned to the Tonks' residence to stay with his Aunt Andromeda. With everything that had happened there, he did not feel ready yet to return to Malfoy Manor, and he did not want to leave Andromeda alone to care for Teddy by herself. Narcissa spent many days there as well, especially as the investigations and trials of the Death Eaters began, and much of Malfoy Manor was locked up in bureaucratic strangleholds. Draco and Hermione travelled together to Sydney, Australia, in the 3rd week of May, where she stopped in a flower shop and introduced herself to the owners, Monica and Wendell Wilkins, as an old friend of theirs. On the 2nd day that she went back, she introduced them to the idea of wizarding magic. At their 4th meeting, she told them about Lord Voldemort and the Wizarding War back in England, and how it had finally been resolved. And finally, on her 5th visit to see them, she explained who she really was to them. Helen and Richard Granger were quite resistant at first to this knowledge. They had settled into a life there in Sydney. As part of their backstory, Hermione had made them believe that they were unable to have children, and that they had come to accept this fact. To suddenly have a fully grown daughter, who also happened to be a witch, was a lot for them to take in. But after several hours of talking about all of it, they agreed to allow her to attempt a reversal of the memory charms that she had performed on them from before. She had discussed the process extensively with Professors Flitwick and McGonagall, and had contacted a memory specialist wizard in Australia to help her. When the memory charm reversal was done, their reunion was joyful and tearful. Hermione apologized repeatedly, whilst Helen simply hugged her daughter, sobbing. Richard only hugged his wife and child wordlessly, then brought Draco in for a handshake and a long hug. "Thank you for keeping my daughter safe, son." Draco tried very hard, and failed at not crying at these words. For most of the summer, Draco split much of his time between being at home to support his aunt, helping Andromeda and his mother care for baby Teddy, helping to rebuild Hogwarts Castle, and visiting Hermione at the Black family house. Spending time with Hermione whilst Potter was around was very awkward, especially at first. Potter barely met his eye or spoke more than a few words to him for the first few visits. It seemed that only Hermione's goodwill towards Draco, and the fact that Draco's wand had done what it did, allowed Potter to even be in the same room with him. Eventually, the scar-headed wizard's curiosity about many of the things Hermione had begun to share with him got the best of him. He began asking about all of the events that Draco had been involved in, the search for the locket at the Ministry, and the one for the cup at Gringotts Bank. Draco's part in assisting Dumbledore's army during 5th year, under Professor Umbridge, as part of the hapless inquisitorial squad. Even his help in finding the information about Nicholas Flamel, and the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets back when he and Hermione would barely qualify as friends. "So you really did work with Hermione on a lot of this stuff during school, even though you were calling her mudblood and threatening us with your Death Eater father the whole time?" Potter's tone of disbelief across the table in the Black House kitchen was palpable. Draco sighed, but kept his eyes on the black-haired wizard opposite him. I have apologized to her many times over. But now I really need to apologize to you as well. I'm sorry, Potter, for all the shit that I did and said over the years. I was stupid and scared for pretty much my whole time at Hogwarts. It doesn't excuse it, I know. I put a lot of people in danger, and I could have killed someone. Hell, for much of 6th year, I actually was trying to kill someone. Turns out I just really suck at it. He tried for a smile and could see Potter's doubt forming. He started again. Several other students in Slytherin House would report things back to their parents, who would talk to mine, and it's not a good excuse, but I feared my father, and later, you know... He broke off, with a barely there grimace. Lord Voldemort. Yeah, I can kind of understand all that. Not that it excuses it, but I do sort of get it. Some of his animosity towards Draco dissolved when he heard about Draco's friendship with Neville, Luna, and Ginny. In the following weeks, either at Black House in the evenings or in the wrecked hallways of Hogwarts, which both of the wizards were helping to repair, Draco and Harry discussed many things. Occlumency and legilimency, Professor Snape's role in both of their lives, Dumbledore's final moments with both of them that fateful night on the Astronomy Tower, and the aftermath of the snake bite in Godric's Hollow. At times, one or both of them got so caught up in the retelling of it all that they were laughing and talking over each other like friends. When one of them would suddenly realize what was happening, each would pull back their camaraderie. Their words would become stiff and stilting, and they would mask their feelings with flippancy and annoyance once more. But the lengths of time between a new mask of distrust being affected and the moments that this same mask fell grew shorter, and after a few months there was nothing more than a guarded kinship and understanding between the two wizards. Within a year it was not so unusual to see Draco and Hermione on a double date with Harry Potter and Ginny Weasley. This was, of course, always covered in Witch Weekly magazine. At the start of June, Draco searched Diagon Alley with help from Hermione and Bill and Percy Weasley for the man that Draco thought might be Alistair Moody. They finally located him in Horizon Alley, and were able to get him to St. Mungo's Hospital. Over the next several months, the hospital mediwitches and wizards were able to repair the mental and physical damage that he sustained from falling off of his broom during the Battle of the Seven Potters. They theorized that he had used a wandless cushioning charm to break his fall, but the impact had been still quite damaging to his body. Eventually, they were able to restore his memories and personality. Moody eventually took on a part-time advisory role in the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Draco asked Hermione and Kingsley Shacklebolt for their help in locating the ice cream parlor owner, Florian Fortescue, as well. After a few days of searching the Muggle world, a Muggle private investigator found him living in the St. John's Wood part of London. Florian was working as a co-owner and microbrew craftsman for a small brewery and pub. He was engaged to a lovely woman who had long white blonde hair and 3 boisterous dogs named Vanilla, Strawberry, and Fudge. When Draco took the slim dossier on Fortescue, complete with photos, to Narcissa, she wept with happiness and thanked him. It was enough that she finally had answers. Hermione, Potter, Draco, Weasley, and many of the others who had fought in the Battle of Hogwarts were now helping with the rebuilding of it. Minerva McGonagall was officially chosen by the Hogwarts Board of Governors to be the new headmistress. She directed the students and other volunteers that helped with an iron resolve and a to-do list that stretched nearly the length of the Great Hall. It was a testament to her strong will that the school was able to reopen only 2 weeks after September 1st, only a handful of months after the final battle. Much of the school looked the same, except for the small memory garden that blended seamlessly into the patch of earth between the Black Lake and the Forbidden Forest. Here, 50 trees were planted amidst the walking paths and benches, built for reflection and meditation. After some time to think it over, Harry Potter and Ronald Weasley decided to forego their final year of formal education at Hogwarts in favour of joining the Auror Corps at the Ministry of Magic. Potter completed some of his core NEWT courses by correspondence, flew to Professor McGonagall's office once a week to check his progress. In that way, he was able to sit his NEWT exams in 4 disciplines: Transfigurations, Charms, Potions, and Defense Against the Dark Arts. Draco and Hermione did return to Hogwarts for the redo of their 7th year, along with many of their cohort. Theo and Hermione were chosen as head boy and head girl, in a show of unity between houses for the school. Professor McGonagall attempted to explain to Draco why he was passed over, even though his grades ordinarily would have vaulted him into the head boy position, but he smiled and told her that he understood completely. It was unseemly for a head boy to go around with a tattoo, particularly if that tattoo represented an evil faction hell-bent on destroying the wizarding world as they knew it. "No, Mr. Malfoy, I don't believe that your mark means anything. It didn't mean anything last year, and it still means nothing today. You are the person you have chosen to be, not the persona that was chosen for you." She came around the headmaster's desk and scratched the grey tabby cat that lay, stomach exposed, on the other visitor's chair. "I simply didn't wish to expose you and Miss Granger to the temptation of cloistering yourselves alone in your private dormitories and neglecting your duties to the school." Draco blushed bright red at that proclamation. "I understand, Professor." But this minor embarrassment did not stop Draco from cloistering himself in Hermione's private dormitory, whenever the chance arose. The 1999 Hogwarts Quidditch Cup, during their make-up 7th year, was far more laid back than in previous years. All of the houses fielded a team, and because Gryffindor had returned to the most talent, they easily won the Quidditch Cup that year. Captain Ginny Weasley was proud to accept the trophy for Gryffindor House. However, because all the matches for the 1998 Quidditch Cup had been played prior to the Battle of Hogwarts, Draco was surprised and pleased to learn that during his 7th year, his Slytherin team had finally won a cup, and under his captaincy, no less. It was too bad that he wasn't there to accept it, but Urquhart had stepped in to receive it after the final match, something that Draco was glad to learn about weeks after the battle. Because Potter had won the 1996 and 1997 Quidditch Cups during his 5th and 6th years, and also had not been there for either cup presentation ceremony at the end of the match, Hermione thought it would be funny one Christmas a few years after the battle to give the 3 captains personalized Quidditch jerseys to commemorate their winning seasons. Hermione kept a framed photo on her desk of all 3 of them, the 2 smiling red-clad Gryffindors in their captains' jerseys, flanking the sulking, singular Slytherin in the centre in green. In the moving photo, both Harry and Ginny simultaneously press buttons on their lapels that switch from the words "Gryffindor wins" to "Malfoy stinks." Narcissa Malfoy was investigated and released without further penalty by the Wizengamot after testimony from Hermione, Potter, and Lucius. Though she considered leaving her husband for a time after the war, she came to realize that Lucius had thought he was doing right by his family, by following the examples his father had set. Too late he realized it was the wrong example. Narcissa eventually found that, despite Lucius's faults, there was still some good in him. She made it her goal to keep finding more of it every day. He loved his family more than anything, and whilst sometimes that had led him down the worst paths, At other times it brought them joy. Lucius Malfoy's physical and mental decline from repeated use of the Cruciatus Curse had been swift after the Battle of Hogwarts. He was investigated by the Department of Magical Law Enforcement and was tried and convicted for his crimes in both this war and in the previous Wizarding War. Because of his weakened mental and physical state, he only spent 7.5 years in Azkaban, but was made to forfeit the use of a magic wand for the remainder of his life, effectively forbidding him from performing deliberate magic ever again. He found after a time that he did not mind, and even enjoyed learning how to do things for himself, without the aid of magic. Pansy Parkinson was put on trial for the murder of Edwin Urquhart, as well as for doing bodily harm against Blaise, and for voluntarily joining Voldemort's army of Death Eaters. She was convicted on all counts, and was sentenced to spend the next 35 years in Azkaban. Many of the Imperiist Ministry of Magic officials were released with probation and monitoring, to ensure that they were well and truly no longer under any lasting dark spells or curses. The remaining Death Eaters that had not been killed or captured at the Battle of Hogwarts were placed on every country's wizarding authorities' watch lists. Many of them were chased across the European continent for the next couple of years. The last known one, Rabistan Lestrange, was captured, tried, convicted and imprisoned in Azkaban in 2002. Chapter 141. 4 Weddings and a Funeral. Wedding number 1. April 2004. The shell-shocked couple stepped out of the green flames of the flue and into the warmly, richly decorated flat. They looked straight ahead as though they could not believe what they had just witnessed. With a singular mind, they turned to look at each other. Then they dissolved into a fit of giggles, struggling to hold each other up. "Please, promise me, when the blessed day comes, you will not shove our cake in my mouth, the way she did to Weasley, Hermione. It was bad enough that the cake was banana and caramel flavoured, but then to make the bloke wear it. Parvati researched traditions from all over the globe to incorporate into the ceremony and the reception," Hermione said wearily, by way of explanation, her giggles subsiding. "She insisted that the ceremony and the reception both needed to have an international flair. It's why the whole event took nearly 7 hours. Oh, was it only 7 hours?" he asked sarcastically. "Salazar's zits, my! It felt like 7 months. I swear, the Weaselette's baby bump grew 3 sizes whilst we were there." Draco yawned hugely. "Yes, I never properly thanked Harry and Ginny for just doing a small wedding in Corsica. 20 people in a little castle on the coast in the summer beats that 3-ring circus we just went to, hands down. I counted at least 4 rings in tonight's circus act, my," Draco interjected tiredly, rubbing his eyes. "You're right, I forgot about the penguins." Hermione yawned and nodded. "How could you forget? I swear, one of them ate off my sardine plate when I wasn't looking. I know I had another salmon fillet when I sat down." She giggled. Just imagine the spectacle it would have been if Molly hadn't been busy at school. I swear, her becoming the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor has been the greatest boon to that family. George and Ginny don't have her constantly offering suggestions about their lives, and Ronald actually had to learn to cook for himself. They laughed together. Then Hermione propped her aching feet up on the small table in front of Draco's green velvet sofa. "I am so tired. Is it all right if I crash here tonight?" He fell upon the tufted sofa by her side and kissed her neck, rubbing her shoulders gently. "Always." "Oh, good." Hermione's head fell back onto the sofa. She smiled lazily, and then she wandlessly summoned a nearby blanket to cover them. "Wait." He drew back. "I thought you meant in my bed." I'm just too tired, Draco, and your sofa is so comfy and lovely," his witch mumbled, burrowing further into the cozy blankets. No, please, don't fall asleep here. I've got to go back to Heidelberg in the morning. We've only got one more night. Please?" At this, Hermione popped one eye open. "Okay, you win this time, Draco Malfoy, but only because there's no way I'll be able to visit you for at least a month once I get back to Oxford. My examinations revision schedule is already planned out, and every minute is accounted for." "Then let's make tonight count." Draco grinned and began kissing her neck, just below her ear, knowing it was the spot she most liked. Within seconds, she was as wide awake as he was. She moaned, stretching cat-like, and kicked off her 4-inch heels. Draco towed off his own shoes and yanked off the dress robes that he'd grown tired of wearing about 6 hours ago. She kissed him back warmly, humming into his mouth. Wrapping her arms around him, she apparated them straight into his bed. She rolled him onto the bed and straddled him, her dress already shimmying up to her hips. She grabbed the bottom of it and tugged up quickly, the stretchy dark blue fabric pulling easily over her head, then puddling onto the floor beside them. He stared up at her admiringly, taking in the sight of her beautiful body in the navy blue and ivory lingerie. "Hermione Jean Granger, were you hiding this body in that lingerie at that wedding this whole time, and didn't tell me?" He surged up to her and lifted her a bit, sucking small love bites on her clavicle. "I tried to." He stilled. "When? Because if I had had that information when old Mad Eye was complaining about how they didn't teach wandless magic anymore, or when Percy Weasley was practically cramming his argument about broomstick length regulations down my throat—" "That man is unnecessarily fixated on broomstick lengths," Hermione murmured. "Yeah, I think it has more to do with that witch in the sports and games office. You know, with the glasses," Draco asked, running his hands along the top of her bum and kissing her neck. "Oh, you mean, Shandy? No, Shelby Falsheimer. She works for the Department of the Regulation of Magical Sports Supplies, with the hair bun and the cigarettes. Really? She's easily in her early 60s. What can I say? Percy's got a thing for older witches now." Draco grinned as he lay back down and pulled her with him, reaching behind her to unfasten her bra. He struggled with the garment for a few moments before asking in mock annoyance, "Am I wasting my time? Does this one unfasten in the front?" She reached around and deftly flicked the hooks. "No, it's just very hard," as the actress said to the bishop. "You've got to stop quoting that television program. Blaise and Theo and Dean have absolutely ruined you," she groused. He growled and flipped them over suddenly, earning a little surprised shriek of laughter from her. "No, witch. You're the one that's ruined me." He kissed her breast, sucking and nibbling at her neck and décolletage. "You've ruined me for every dinner out with friends. You've ruined me for every pub night. You've ruined me for my classes at school." He continued his kisses, earning low noises of satisfaction and pleasure from her. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I mean," he said, biting lightly at her shoulder, "I have dinner or drinks with friends and I think, I wish Hermione was here. Or I'm sitting in class behind a girl with bushy hair, thinking her hair isn't nearly as big and bushy as Hermione's." She pushed at him, laughing uncontrollably. "Stop it, you brat! My hair has not been really that bushy since 3rd year. 5th year, but who's counting?" He rose up on his hands above her, his abdominal muscles clenched, holding his weight. He smiled rakishly down at her. Seeing her pretended angry expression, he relented. "I'm kidding. Let's meet in the middle and say 4th year." "And you've been staring at girls in class, have you?" she asked, a little petulantly. "You're telling me that you haven't been ogling your old muggle school chum, Jacob, And his bloke Gary during your law courses together?" he asked, lowering his mouth to her ribs and raising one brow at her. "That's different. They're gay. And dating each other," Hermione protested, laughingly. "Frankly, I find it offensive that you assume to know Regina's sexual preferences, he said, kissing her stomach. "I didn't, But her sputtering was eased by his laughter. "I'm kidding, pet. I'm not even sure if her name is Regina. It's either her or one of the blondes next to her. I don't pay that much attention to names, you know," he said, between kisses. "And all those Durmstrang and Hohenzollernheim girls look alike anyway." She hummed suspiciously, but smiled. "Well, we've only got a few more months apart, in any case." He smiled against her, and moved further down, pressing light kisses to her warm body. He looked back up, staring at her with lidded eyes, pupils blown wide to take in every bit of her beauty. "You're so fucking perfect, He crawled back up to lie next to her. As they began to move together, Draco simply watched, slack-jawed, whilst her energy, her magic, seemed to course through her body. It was, to put it bluntly, breathtaking to watch. They lay spent, sheets pulled up to cover them as the cool air touched their overheated bodies. Her riotous hair covered half of his face, but he found that if he did not move, he did not mind the tickle of it so much. "I will be so glad to have you back in England for good this summer," she said in a low voice. His arm drifted around her, gathering her to him. They both rolled their sides, and he tucked her in close, moving her hair to kiss her ear. "I'm looking forward to coming back," he said. "Germany is nice, but it doesn't have you." "I'll still have 1 year to go on my law degree, you know." "Yes, and I'll be in specialized aura training, but we'll still have most nights and weekends," he reasoned. "True, but I feel so bad. We always have to come back here. Don't get me wrong, I love your flat. I just wish I could reciprocate and that you could come to mine." "Honestly, it's just as well. Don't get me wrong, it's 100 times better than when you were still living at home. I can't tell you how embarrassing it was to wake up needing coffee and going downstairs in your spare robe to find your mother and father in the kitchen having porridge. It felt like that robe barely covered anything. I'm not sure your father has looked me in the eye since." Hermione giggled. "I'm pretty sure that was my robe from when I was 12. Draco closed his eyes. "Salazar's sack. That makes it so much worse." "If you come back to our flat, I'll make sure that Padma and Lavender are on their best behavior this time," Hermione promised. "Well, their behavior couldn't have gotten much worse, They washed all my white muggle Oxford shirts with a Gryffindor blanket, and turned them all pink." "That was an accident." They charmed the shampoo bottle to feel full, but it was actually empty.
"It wouldn't have been empty if you hadn't washed your hair 3 times each time you showered."
And the next morning, they charmed the kettle to sing that ridiculous song."
"How did it go again? Drake the snake gives as good as he takes. His body will grant every wish that you make."
That was so embarrassing," Draco grumbled as he blushed.
"It still sings that, you know," Hermione mused. "Sometimes it even adds new verses. The charm is getting a bit wonky, though I should refresh it when I go home."
"Please, don't," Draco said, face reddening even more in embarrassment at the very thought. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you a bit about the summer."
"You mentioned that your lease is up in September. Padma told me tonight that she was thinking about getting her own place soon. And Lavender is hardly ever home with her tour schedule."
"Yes,"
Hermione said slowly. He couldn't tell if it was confusion, apprehension, or nervousness in her tone, but he pressed forward anyway. "What would you think about moving in here?"
"With you?"
"Yes, I'm a package deal with a flat," he drawled, to cover his nervousness.
"And you're okay with Crookshanks and my books?"
"If you're okay with my potions lab and my green sofa."
"I do love that sofa,"
she said, pretending to be lost in thought. "And I tolerate your cat," he said magnanimously, flinching away from her tickling fingers with a shout of laughter.
"You and Crookshanks love each other," she giggled. "I've seen the two of you share a pork chop."
"That was a one-time thing." Draco waved a hand dismissively. It was the last chop, and he called it for himself. But in my defense, it was on my plate.
"You cut it into pieces for him,"
she laughed disbelievingly. "Well, how was he supposed to hold a knife and cut it himself, Hermione? He's got no thumbs, you know." Draco answered defensively, and they dissolved into a fit of laughter. "So, what do you think? Will you move in with me?" Draco asked again.
Hermione stretched against him. "Crooks and I would love to."
Wedding number 2, September 2005. "Did you try the swordfish?" Ginny Weasley held out a fork, filled with several bites of the delectable fish to him. He took it quickly. "No, I'm too enamored with these crab and cream cheese puff pastries. A cheese has no bloody right to taste this perfect with seafood," he said indecently, around a bite of the aforementioned pastry, sliding one onto Ginny's plate. "Is it weird that they're sharing a fork? I feel like a third wheel around them when the food shows up sometimes," Harry said to Hermione, as they sat with their significant others, eating their food at a normal pace, without the exchanged looks of ecstasy and gluttonous moans. Ginny wiped her mouth daintily. "Well, seeing as I can't drink, and I'm too big and heavy for dancing for very long, the food is the main thing I came to this wedding for," she said, spreading her napkin back across her ample baby bump. "Yeah, Red, why is it you're always pregnant at these weddings? It's like Potter has some kind of inadequacy to make up for." Draco tipped Hermione a wink. "Have you all tried the mango chicken? It's amazing!" Weasley plopped into his seat, depositing a plate even more full than Draco's and Ginny's on the table. "Yes," he and Ginny both answered. "Ronald, you could have at least carried your own drink." Parvati waddled up, carrying her own full plate and 2 glasses, one filled with sangria and the other with juice. Draco stood to assist Weasley's pregnant wife, and she blushed as she accepted his help. "I thought it would help you balance better, Vati. I'm sorry," the shamefaced Weasley said. Draco raised an eyebrow at Hermione pointedly. "A toast!" Weasley cried, to distract from his faux pas of not carrying his own damn drink. "To the happy couple!" "To Ernie and Michael," they echoed. "And to Justin, for providing his house as the venue. This place is seriously posh." Potter followed up. "Not that your place isn't posh here, too, Malfoy." Draco rolled his eyes. Ever since their arrival in Malta, he'd had to endure ribbing from the Potters regarding the size of his summer home here. Evidently, 7 bedrooms and 9 bathrooms, overlooking the Mediterranean, paled in comparison with the Finch-Fletchley's mega mansion, with its 19 bedrooms and 26 bathrooms. To Draco's mind, that many bathrooms felt churlish, ostentatious, and redundant. "You haven't seemed to mind living there these past few days, Potter. I've seen your pale white arse laying out there on my private beach." "Wait, are you seriously calling me out for being pale?" Potter started, but was interrupted by Weasley, who had just been discussing something with his wife. "Hey, hurry! Did you say you were thinking about the name Rose for a girl?" Draco shared another pointed look with Hermione. Speaking of inadequacies people are making up for, he thought. Hermione spluttered into her drink and gave him a look of admonishment, which dissolved quickly into a giggle hidden in her napkin. It wasn't the first time they'd noticed how Ron tried to match Potter on everything. He'd asked Parvati to marry him just days after returning from Harry and Ginny's wedding. His and Parvati's first baby was conceived within weeks of the Potters announcing their second pregnancy. Draco privately thought that if Potter announced he was dropping out of the Auror Corps to join a whaling expedition on the high seas,
Ron Weasley would buy a life preserver and stow away on the boat. Right now, the two wizards were discussing baby names, and Draco had it on good authority that Potter was not considering Rose in the slightest. Ginny had given the name to her brother as a red herring, to throw him off the scent of the names they were actually considering for baby number 2.
"Oi, ferret, not drinking tonight. Ginny and Vati are up the duff. What's your excuse?"
Weasley turned back to the table, noticing Draco's butterbeer. Draco rolled his eyes at the coarse language of his colleague and cast an airtight muffliato. "You know McLaggen and I are on that black market ingredient smuggling case out of Sicily. He's on duty with it this week and I'm on standby, just in case he needs backup. We're staking out their warehouse and laboratory all week, trying to catch the ringleader. Word is they're making a major move in the next several days."
Ron nodded knowingly. "Yeah, that's right. I'm on with them in a couple of days, I think."
McLaggen," Ginny said, leaning back to allow her food to settle and to push a bit at her stomach to rearrange a foot that was kicking her in the ribs.
"He's the real reason I always overeat at weddings."
"How so?" asked Parvati, who had been visiting family in India the week of Cormac McLaggen's wedding to Astoria Greengrass. It was Draco's turn to speak up. "The tosser thought he'd save a bit of money by telling the caterer that they'd only have 100 or so guests. But they had something closer to 500, to my estimation. They ran out of food very soon after the wedding party, and the family was served. Astoria was so embarrassed."
"I would have been too," Parvati exclaimed. "Don't run out of food. That's wedding rule number 1.
Hermione looked over at him. "Wedding rule number 2 involves having dancing penguins as the tableside entertainment." The thought popped clearly out of nowhere into his mind, and he inhaled his butterbeer so quickly that he spent the next 5 minutes gasping in laughter, long after Potter's quick-thinking anapneo cleared his airway. When he'd finally regained his self-control, his eyes narrowed at his witch across the table. Hermione sat in wide-eyed innocence, pretending she hadn't just done that to him. Such a Slytherin minx. 2 days later, after seeing the Potters off via international portkey back to England, Draco and Hermione were finally able to relax on the beach alone together. They took advantage of the solitude of the private beach, and Draco thoroughly enjoyed the skimpy swimming costumes that Hermione had saved for their alone time together. That night, they'd agreed to shower and dress and meet on the terrace for dinner at 8. He'd gone upstairs before her and left the bathroom just as she was going in. His stomach was a bundle of nerves. He wanted everything to be perfect. He'd chosen the music, the wine, the menu, his outfit. It would be a night they'd never forget, he was certain. At 8:30 he was still waiting. At 8:40 he went upstairs to check on her. He couldn't imagine what could be keeping her. She lay on the bed, her body wrapped in an oversized bath towel, hair still damp and growing curlier and bigger by the minute. He smothered a laugh. It had been a long day. The Potter's portkey had left right after breakfast, and they'd spent most of the day in the sun, not to mention the exertion of the 3 memorable sessions they'd had on the beach sunbeds and in the pool cabana. He approached the bed quietly and touched her gorgeous hair. She stirred slightly. "Draco," she mumbled sleepily, without opening her eyes. "Shh, yes, it's me. I didn't mean to disturb you, Sleeping Beauty." A lazy smile broke across her sleepy face. "That's a muggle fairy tale." He kissed her lips softly. "I know. Andromeda's book collection had fairy tales in it," he said softly, watching as the low light from the fire in the fireplace danced upon her features. She really was so beautiful, he thought. He wondered again how he'd gotten so lucky. She answered, eyes still closed, fighting wakefulness. He sat on the bed next to her, and pulled her legs across his own. She tried to sit up, and he helped her, pulling her upper body up to rest against his, which was resting on the headboard behind them.
Hermione.
Hmm?
Eyes still closed, she smiled again, that magnificent smile that could not stop itself from lighting up her face.
I love you.
Her kappa eyes flew open to meet his in wonder, as though she suddenly realized that they were in the same positions they'd been in on the Muggle train when he'd first told her this. His own silver eyes were open wide, showing every bit of emotion in his heart. In his hand he held the open ring box from the Black family vault. The periwinkle-coloured tanzanite gleamed, and the pearls and sapphires looked like the dusk-darkened ocean waves outside the nearby windows. Her breath failed her as she gasped, and tears flooded her eyes. He slid from the bed, dropping to one knee. His silver eyes gleamed at hers as he asked, "Will you marry me?"
"Oh my God! Draco! Of course, yes!"
She, too, dropped to the floor, kneeling with him, hugging him fiercely, all fatigue forgotten. An hour later, the perfect food and the perfect wine were brought to their bedroom, to be enjoyed there instead. 4 love-making sessions in one day really did wear them out. 2 mornings later, they were still basking in the glow of their new engagement when unexpected and terrible news arrived. They'd spent the previous day flu-calling friends and family back home. Over breakfast, they were talking about how large of an engagement soiree that Narcissa was likely already planning. Suddenly, a large silver ram cantered into the room and spoke in the voice of Draco's boss, Head Auror Gawain Robards.
"Malfoy, there's bad news about McLaggen. He was with Weasley, but they got separated, and now he's missing. Flu call me, as soon as possible. I'm sending back up your way."
Wedding number 3, June 2008. The wedding of Draco Malfoy and Hermione Granger was, according to all who attended, spectacular. The food was amazing, as a once again heavily pregnant and sober Ginny Weasley would attest. The fountain of golden champagne, which contained a single vial of Felix Felicis, danced and splashed merrily all night. The Potters, Lovegood Zabinis, Longbottoms, Corner Macmillans, Woods, Thomas Finnegans, Finch Fletchleys, and all of the Weasleys enjoyed the early evening filled with fine food and dancing. Many had brought their young children, and once the nannies had taken them off to bed, the parents danced the night away, under the stars of the rooftop venue in Paris. Even Astoria seemed to have a good time. She'd brought her 2-year-old son, Draco's godson. She had been very grateful to Draco, Cormac's former partner, for helping find his murderers and bringing them to justice. Draco, for his part, felt rather guilty about the night Cormac was abducted. He couldn't help but feel that if he'd been there, he possibly could have prevented it. Knowing that there was likely nothing he could have done to change the outcome was little solace. Theo, as one of the 3 groomsmen, was extremely excited to see Eliza again. They had dated off and on for a bit, soon after the war, and Theo had even moved to Dublin for a short time whilst Eliza was at university. When she finally learned that Theo was a wizard, it had taken her only a short time to accept it, and even embrace it. But their differences had overcome their similarities, and their separate lives made them grow apart. Now the 2 of them hadn't seen each other in 5 years. Theo had bounced from relationship to relationship, never really settling down. Draco often thought that he was waiting for Eliza to return. Now, perhaps, was their chance. Hermione's simple, sleeveless A-line ball gown of palest periwinkle, almost white, satin was offset by a vivid periwinkle ribbon at the waist. Her charm bracelet encircled her wrist, and a collar of tanzanite sparkled at her throat. She carried a bouquet of pink camellias, daisies, gardenias, and purple vincas. Draco's muggle white tie attire was precisely cut for his frame. All of the mothers, Helen, Narcissa, Molly, and Andromeda, all agreed that the periwinkle lining of his tailcoat, which matched her ribbon border, was dashing. She walked up the aisle after Teddy, who escorted the adorable flower girls, Rose Weasley and Callista Zabini. Hermione's face flushed with excitement, copper eyes flashing at him in joy and adoration. His silver eyes reflected the same back to her, and he found himself surreptitiously wiping away more than one tear as the ceremony progressed. But the reason for her fiercely blushing pink cheeks was a private joke known only to the two of them, and partly by Ginny, Luna, Eliza, and the women in their families. 20 minutes before, she was checking her hair for the 15th time in the mirror, nervously waiting for her father's knock at the door to signal that they were ready. Her handkerchief that she used to communicate with Draco warmed against her left breast where she'd placed it, seeing as she had no cuffs in her wedding dress. "Caput Draconis," she whispered, pulling it out of her bra. "When we're alone, together, tonight, I'm going to vanish that dress and show you exactly how much I love every blissful inch of you, my." She blushed deeply as her eyes widened. "What's he writing to you? Come on, we all want to hear it," Ginny Weasley cajoled, tossing her flaming red hair over one shoulder as Padma tied up her periwinkle dress in the back. Hermione had tried to find the most flattering dress she could to fit Ginny's enormous baby bump, and the cinched waist was key. "No, I can't say," Hermione whispered in embarrassment. The conversation between Helen, Molly, and Narcissa faltered at Ginny's words. Luna and Eliza turned away from where they'd been steaming wrinkles from Luna's dress with her wand. Parvati and Andromeda stopped arranging corsages and chatting about their work at St. Mungo's. All eyes turned curiously to Hermione, who blushed harder. The handkerchief heated again. "I'm going to lay you down on the bed and kiss every place on your body, and just when you can't take my teasing lips and tongue any more, I'm going to make you mine, love. I've been dreaming for days about this, Hermione." "Oh my God, Draco," she whispered, the flush of her cheeks now resembling a tomato. But to her chagrin, he wasn't done. He wrote, "Then, when you're all done and you can't take any more, I'm going to lay you back down and kiss you all over once more until you're screaming for me again." Surely he was done, she thought, panting slightly. Luna passed her a glass of water, and Hermione did not meet her eyes as she took it. A final message arrived. She almost hesitated to read it, but did so anyway. "I love you so much, my. I'll see you soon. I'll be the nervous but dashing-looking bloke up front. Nice suit, great hair. You can't miss me." She took a deep breath and whispered a reply. "I love you too, and I'll get you back for this." 4 minutes later, a sleek silver horse Patronus galloped into the room where Draco had just re-entered from the loo. The group of wizards included his groomsmen, Theo, Blaise, and Potter. Weasley, Neville, and Justin had also stopped in to share a last-minute fire whiskey for luck with them. The silver horse shook out its flowing mane and spoke in Ginny Potter's voice. "Ferret, whatever you wrote to Hermione must have been amazing, because she will not stop blushing. Do it again." The men in the room exchanged looks and burst out laughing. "What the hell did you write, Malfoy?" Potter asked, clapping his aura partner of 2 years on the back. "That's between me and Hermione, Potter. Stop being weird," admonished Draco. "I'll tell you later," Blaise said conspiratorially. "You will not," Draco exclaimed hotly. It was his turn to blush. "Okay then," said Theo, turning to Blaise. "Just tell us now." "You'll do no such thing," Draco said firmly, and the matter was dropped, although Draco did not miss the "later" that Blaise mouthed to everyone gathered. She did, in fact, get him back, in 2 ways. First, she fed him a piece of the white chocolate and cherry cake, dashing just a bit of the icing on his nose as she did so. Second, she took him into the bridal room halfway through the night to show him that yet again she'd shown up to a wedding wearing some delectable lingerie. As they climbed on the back of the somewhat tamed, they'd been assured by Charlie Weasley, Welsh green dragon, to ride off to the honeymoon, Draco thought, every bit of the struggle that brought us here was worth it. Wedding number 4, September 2014. The almost entirely Muggle-style wedding of Theo and Eliza was a posh affair held at the Standard Hotel in London. Their old friend Basil had somehow gotten them onto the schedule for later that same year with minimal issues, despite the usual 2-year waiting list. Basil was living high on love, as he'd recently become involved in a whirlwind romance with a rather unusual American woman named Wanda. He was eager to help out Theo, and Theo was eager to spend a chunk of his late father's gold to secure the spot. Hermione was the maid of honor. As Draco was best man, barely walking baby Cyrus was held by the Weaselette for the entire ceremony, with the Grangers taking over for the reception. Raffi arrived soon after the cake was served to take Cyrus back to the Malfoys' townhouse, to keep him until his parents got home. By now he was rather exhausted, and went to her happily. Draco and Hermione met Harry and Ginny near the bar after they'd seen Raffi off with Cyrus.
"Thanks again for watching side during the ceremony, Ginny. Narcissa would ordinarily love to, but since she was kind of the de facto mother of the groom," Hermione explained.
"It was no worry," Ginny reassured her. "He's such a lovely baby, so easy to care for."
Hermione and Draco shared a smile. They knew better than to brag about how well Cyrus slept through the night, or how seldom he was cranky. 2 of the 3 Potter children had fought sleep as toddlers, keeping their parents up half the night for years.
"So, Draco tells me you got a big case coming up, Hermione?" Harry asked.
"Yes, that group, you know, the one that Remus was involved in. I'm lobbying for subsidized medication to treat their affliction, and a work-life program that will help them obtain jobs that can work around their schedules."
All this was said hesitantly, as the Muggle bartender nearby seemed highly interested in their conversation. "Well, hopefully the court backs your proposal," offered Ginny. A third couple approached, wearing matching yellow formal wear. The man's crisp tailcoat was a pale banana shade, whilst his trousers were a blistering mustard colour. It was no match for his wife's flowing gown of vivid lemon, however.
"Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad to see you all out tonight."
Luna beamed at them. Or perhaps it was just her gown that was beaming. It was difficult for Draco to look directly at her in that blinding yellow dress. "Well, it was really hard to miss you," Harry quipped, and Draco nearly choked on his whiskey and soda.
Thankfully, the comment was well received by Luna. "Yes, the first wedding we both attended. I wore yellow as well, Harry. Daddy always said it was such a lovely wedding colour." "How is Zeno doing, Luna?"
Hermione asked kindly. It was only to be polite, Draco knew. Zeno Lovegood had been hounding Hermione, Ron, and Harry for years for a sit-down interview. Lately, he'd been disguising the request as feature pieces for Hermione's werewolf integration proposal. As for Ron, he'd acquiesced to a full 5-page spread in the Quibbler the month prior. He and George were branching out from the joke shop business, and wanted exposure. Their idea for a family-friendly pub, complete with skittles, snooker, arcade games, and an indoor miniature Quidditch pitch, was a bit of a departure for the typical Diagon Alley crowd, so they'd opened it in Hogsmeade. It did a roaring trade on weekends, and Ron wanted to consider a similar, more upscale adult clientele option for Diagon Alley. They had a surprising backer in Aberforth Dumbledore, who claimed he just wanted some peace and quiet in the Hogshead again, but Ron had privately told them all that Aberforth was actually quite obsessed with snooker. Ginny, Luna, and Hermione fell into conversation, and Draco and Harry turned to Blaise.
"I'm truly shocked. Theo let you get away with wearing that ridiculous monstrosity of an outfit,"
Draco drawled to Blaise. "He didn't want to. Ordered me to change. But Eliza saw it and loved it. Wanted Theo to change his and yours to green and purple to match. Theo said you'd look like gay leprechauns on your way to a drug-fueled rave."
Blaise sipped his vodka slowly. "I'd have paid good galleons to see that," Harry said. "I'd have paid good galleons to get out of that," Draco said in turn.
"There's still time, Drake. Hold still." The scar-faced wizard lifted his arm in a gesture quite familiar to Draco, his aura partner for the last 8 years.
"Lower your fucking wand, you tosser. We're surrounded by muggles," Draco said in an urgent whisper, grabbing the man's arm. "Shit, you're right," said Harry, chagrined.
"On that note, I'm going to dance with your wife, Potter," Blaise interjected. "She deserves to see how a proper dance partner moves."
Blaise turned to Ginny and swept her a low bow, offering his hand. "You look like a newborn chick," Harry called. Draco laughed and thumped Harry on the chest. "Good one." He turned to Luna. "Luna, how about a dance with your favorite cousin?"
"I don't see Teddy, but you'll do," Luna said.
The entire group laughed.
"That was a good one too, right, Draco?"
"It was, Luna. I hardly knew you had it in you," Draco said, as they spun away from the small knot of couples.
After a moment, he looked across the dance floor at his gorgeous wife, who was being awkwardly led around the dance floor by the too left-footed Harry Potter. Her honeyed brown hair was set off by the pale pink of her bridesmaid's dress.
Their eyes met, silver caressing copper, in a look of adoring love.
"Hermione looks so lovely tonight. How far along is she?"
Luna asked. Draco stopped dancing, shocked by the question. "What? How? What?"
"With her pregnancy. How far along?"
Luna looked up with her huge silver eyes and gave him a slight smile. Draco's feet began moving again, a bit off from the rhythm of the music. She just took a test yesterday. It was a bit of a shock. We weren't trying. All her old potions had gone bad, and I was intending to brew more, but I've been busy with work, and she said to let things happen as they may."
"But you're happy about it, yes?"
Luna asked perceptively. "My God, I am over the moon about it. Luna, I wanted to burst in here and shout it to everyone, but Hermione insisted that I couldn't steal Theo and Eliza's spotlight. But I'm so excited, Luna. You know what growing up as an only child was like. All the times you wished you had a playmate, someone to get in trouble with, share your secrets. I know you wanted that for Callista and Julian. Cyrus will have that now. And the new baby, too. They both will."
All 3 of them will, yes,"
Luna said, absent-mindedly, as he spun her around. He frowned down at his cousin in confusion. "What do you mean, all 3 of them will?"
"Cyrus and the twins." "Oh, did you not know it was going to be twins?" she asked innocently, with just a hint of a smile.
Draco's knees weakened and he stumbled a bit. I've got to sit down." The funeral. Hermione's point of view.
Nova Elizabeth Malfoy, stop carrying that blasted fish around the house. It died 2 days ago. It's really foul, and I'm insisting it's got to be flushed today, Hermione explained to her 3-year-old daughter from the door of the master bedroom of their townhouse. Across the landing, Nova's chubby toddler legs raced into the bedroom she shared with her twin sister, her arms wrapped possessively around the tiny cardboard box containing a deceased goldfish that was entering its 3rd day post-mortem. "It's gone. It can't swim any more, darling," Hermione called after her, stepping into the girl's bedroom. She went over to the small table holding a fish tank, where the solitary remaining fish swam forlornly. "Finkel wanna swim," Nova said stubbornly. "Tinkle miss Finkel, mummy," Lyra explained plaintively. Hermione knelt beside her 2 daughters, with their silky smooth hair inherited from their father, but which was the soft golden brown of Hermione's own hair. She smiled to see the haphazard braids that her husband had attempted that very morning. Their daughter's huge ice-blue eyes stared up at her hopefully. "I know Tinkle misses Finkel, but sometimes we have to say goodbye to those we love, even if it's just for a little while. But Tinkle will always remember Finkel, and she can think about those happy times together, all right?" Nova relented slightly. "Okay, Mummy." "Okay, listen, girls, put away your toys, please. Nana and Lucky will be here in a few minutes to watch you and your brother whilst I'm gone, and we don't want your room to be untidy, do we?" Hermione said. "No, Mummy, Lucky wanna build with us." Lyra grabbed at the massive tub of Legos, failed to pick it up because of the volume of bricks inside, and dropped it, spilling the contents. Hermione rolled her eyes a bit in amusement and swept the spilt Legos back into the bin wandlessly. "Did Lucky say he was going to build with you?" "Yes!" both girls chorused. There was a chime downstairs. The flue was active. "Nana! Lucky, you came for the formal!" roared the almost 5-year-old Cyrus in greeting below. Even though Narcissa and often Lucius came every Monday and Wednesday to watch the children whilst Hermione went into the office, having them here on a Friday was a special treat. Hermione laughed to herself. She'd forgotten to warn Narcissa about the fish dying Wednesday night, necessitating a funeral today. Cyrus had insisted that Nana and Lucky would want to be there to say goodbye. Hermione felt her handkerchief warm slightly. "Almost ready. Packing the last few things. We're cutting it close, but we should be there on time." "Yes, I'm fluing to meet everyone in about 15 minutes. Your parents just arrived to watch the children."
He responded, "See you there."
Downstairs, Hermione went over the last of the instructions with her in-laws. Lunch was in the muggle refrigerator, and each child was allowed 1 juice with lunch and 1 chocolate biscuit after. "Nana always lets us have 3, Cyrus told her solemnly, pushing his blonde curls away from his copper eyes to look up at her. Narcissa had the temerity to blush. "I don't want to know, Nana, but just for that, you get to deliver the eulogy for Finkel," Hermione told her with a small smirk.
"What's a Finkel?"
asked Lucius, with a slight crinkle to his nose. "The beloved family of our dearly departed Mr. Finkel," Narcissa began. "Miss Finkel," Nova interrupted. "Miss Finkel are gathered here today to send her off to the great ocean of the afterlife. It is certain that she enjoyed her time here on earth with her sister Twinkle." "The other fish is named Tinkle," chortled Cyrus. "They wasn't sisters, only friends," Lyra corrected.
"Who taped up this box? How am I supposed to get this blasted thing open?"
Lucius dug into the multiple layers of tape with his fingernails, without success. Narcissa smiled at him kindly and tapped the box with her wand, and Lucius thanked her quietly. His wand privileges had been revoked as part of his parole several years before. Having now lived for so long without a wand, Lucius sometimes almost forgot about magic. As he'd aged, he'd started to forget little things more and more. The doctors and specialists at St. Mungo's put it down to his repeated exposure to the Cruciatus curse over the years. Lucius pulled out the bit of cardboard upon which the slightly smelly carcass of Miss Finkel rested. Hermione turned green and grabbed the nearby rubbish bin, vomiting the entirety of her breakfast into it. She looked up and caught Narcissa's eyes, which twinkled knowingly. Hermione wiped her mouth with a conjured cloth, internally berating herself. It was still a bit too early to be telling people, she thought.
"Do you think it will be another boy, to even them out, 2 and 2? Narcissa asked excitedly.
"Draco thinks so," Hermione said weakly. Behind them, the toilet flushed.
"Oh," Lucius spoke doubtfully. "Was I meant to flush the little cardboard bed as well? Because I did."
Chapter 142. Epilogue, 19 years later. The flue at 17 Stratton Way flashed to life, and Hermione stepped out, still a bit wobbly from the rush of the morning.
"Oh, thank Merlin! Did you get them?"
Ron asked frantically, haphazardly shoving a bright red cloak into a trunk that was open on the floor.
"Of course, Ron, not to worry,"
Hermione said placatingly. She used her wand to carefully levitate the small brown bag up the nearby staircase and into one of the rooms off the corridor upstairs. After a few seconds, the door to the room slammed shut.
"What shit timing!"
the red-haired wizard moaned.
"Getting her, you know, today of all days."
"It's called a period, Ron, and it's an exciting step. Rose is turning into a young lady."
"Well, she has enough clothing here for about 5 young ladies."
Ron laughed, looking around at the tall piles of trunks and bags in the foyer.
"You're sure the wardrobes at Hogwarts can extend to accommodate all this?"
"Of course. Didn't it for you and Harry?"
"I wouldn't know," Ron said. "I never had more than about 5 outfits at any given time. I'm honestly not even sure I ever hung anything up."
Hermione rolled her eyes, amused. That sounded exactly like the Ron Weasley she'd known and loved for so many years.
"We should get going. Rose, Hugo, it's time to go,"
Ron called. There was a clatter on the stairs, and the 2 siblings emerged into the foyer, pushing to get to the bottom step first.
"Are we taking the flue?"
Hermione asked, grabbing up the small pot of powder from the mantel.
"Nope. Better. I passed my muggle driving test. We're taking the car."
Ron grinned widely at her.
"You did not, really?"
she asked. At his excited nod, she beamed at him.
"Well, that's great, Ron. Let's go."
The platform was crowded and foggy from the train's smokestack and the mist of the cool, nearly autumn morning. Hermione looked around anxiously, but saw no one she recognized yet. A short distance away, she thought she overheard Percy discussing broomstick girths, and she suppressed a small laugh, moving away from him. Hugo's hair flopped into his eyes, and Hermione pushed it back affectionately.
"Hi,"
Albus said solemnly to the 4 of them as he approached. He looked quite nervous, as Hermione knew he would. She'd spoken to Ginny only a few nights ago, and knew the boy was quite anxious about starting Hogwarts.
"Parked all right, then?"
Ron asked Harry a bit imperiously.
"I did. Hermione didn't believe I could pass a muggle driving test, did you? She thought I'd have to confund the examiner."
Ron turned back and gave her a knowing grin.
"No, I didn't. I had complete faith in you,"
Hermione reassured him. Ron and Harry put their heads together to discuss cars and other such nonsense, and Ginny turned to her.
a bundle of nerves gathering behind the red-haired witch's lovely eyes.
"I'm nervous for Owl. It was so easy for James, it always was. Owl is so sensitive."
"Could be worse. Rose started her period today," Hermione said quietly.
"Oh no," Ginny whispered. What shit timing."
"I know, but I think we put as positive a spin on it as we could, everything considered."
Hermione tipped her head to Ginny and gave her a knowing look. Ginny nodded, commiseratingly. "Such a tough time," she said.
"Yes, but hopefully things work out all right," Hermione said with a tight smile.
A bit away from them, Hugo and Lily were discussing which Hogwarts house they planned to be sorted into. "If you're not in Gryffindor, we'll disinherit you," said Ron to his son, "but no pressure."
"Ron!" Hermione, Ginny, Lily and Hugo giggled, but Albus and Rose were far more sombre. "He doesn't mean it," said Hermione and Ginny together. Just at that moment, the fog cleared for an instant and Ron looked up, then turned back swiftly to Harry.
"Look who it is."
The mist shifted more, and Hermione saw who it was that Ron was referring to. Astoria McLaggen stood on the platform, her son standing next to her, looking quite nervous. Next to them stood Draco, the dark coat that his mother had gifted him long ago, buttoned up to his throat. Draco was staring around, likely sizing up threats as he was wont to do when he was out in public. Their eyes met, and his silver eyes warmed, a small smile on his lips. He touched his chest, where his handkerchief lay, then turned a bit as Astoria asked him a question. Hermione took a moment to study the young boy who stood between Draco and Astoria. With Cormac's blonde hair and Astoria's sleek, delicate features, she was startled to see how much the boy almost could have passed for Draco's child. Her heart gave a tiny lurch, knowing that Cyrus would be here, doing this very same thing, in only 7 years.
"So that's little Scorpius,"
Ron said quietly. Hermione could tell that he was a bit saddened by the sight of the young boy, seeing as he'd been the one on duty with Cormac McLaggen when the wizard was abducted. Hermione felt sure that it was a major factor in Ron's decision to step away from being an Auror less than a year later.
"Make sure you beat him in every test, Rosie. Thank God you inherited your mother's brains," Ron joked.
Hermione and Ginny laughed a bit uncomfortably. It occurred to Hermione that Ron perhaps didn't realize that the two witches knew a bit about why Parvati wasn't here today. Yes, she was back in India saying goodbye to her grandmother who was nearing death. But Parvati had also told her two friends that she felt as though she and Ron needed a short break from each other. Hermione only hoped that she and Ron were able to work things out. She piped up, "Ron, for heaven's sake, don't try to turn them against each other before they've even started school."
"You're right, sorry,"
said Ron. Then, as an afterthought, he spoke again.
"Don't get too friendly with him, though, Rose. Granddad Weasel would never forgive you if you married a pureblood."
"Ron!" Ginny and Hermione groaned. Hermione wanted to point out that both he and Ginny had married half-bloods. The only pure blood to have married a muggle-born was Draco. But it wasn't worth the possible argument in pointing it out to him. Then James raced up to tattle on his cousin Victoire and Teddy kissing. The adults, to whom this was no great surprise, merely smiled and nodded. James was annoyed by the lack of interest on the part of the adults.
"Our Teddy! Teddy Lupin! Snogging our Victoire! Our cousin! And I asked Teddy what he was doing."
"You interrupted them?" Ginny asked in exasperation. "You are so like Ron."
"And he said he'd come to see her off. And then he told me to go away. He's snogging her."
Hermione laughed to herself and felt her handkerchief warm. She turned her body a bit to the side. Ever since her wedding, Ginny teased her to no end about all of the tawdry stuff that was written on her sexy handkerchief. and read the message.
Scorpius is loaded onto the train, and I'm going to take Astoria to the Standard, so that she can head home. I think she had a harder time with the goodbyes than he did. I'll be back in a few. I love you.
She smiled and wrote back, You're a good godfather, and a good friend to Astoria. I love you too. What's he writing on your sexy handkerchief? Ginny asked quietly, raising her eyebrow with a knowing look on her face. Ginny Weasley Potter, get your mind out of the gutter. If you must know, he's escorting Astoria back to the Floo at the Standard. Ugh, he's always so unfailingly proper. Oh well, you know what they say. A ponce in the streets and a freak in the I'm begging you, do not finish that sentence, Gin. Ron winced, approaching them. Scorpius got on the train already, then? At Hermione's nod, Ron let out a sigh. I always feel guilty, you know. We were staking out that laboratory, and it had been such a long night. McLaggen had been going on and on about our good old days together on the Gryffindor Quidditch team. He and I never even played a game together, for Merlin's sake. Hermione and Ginny nodded commiseratingly. They'd heard this story a dozen times over the years. I just needed a quick break, you know, just a few minutes to clear my head. Ron sighed heavily and rubbed his face. We know, big brother, Ginny said simply. Nobody blames you. Except Astoria, he said dully, and Hermione had to admit he was probably right. Astoria had blamed nearly every active Auror for her husband's death, even the ones nowhere near Sicily that night. As the team that had tracked down Cormac's murderers a year later, Draco and Harry alone had escaped her wrath. It was likely because of this capture that Astoria had asked Draco to be her son's godfather. Draco had not only agreed, but said he'd do whatever he could to be there for little Scorpius on his big days, like his first train ride to Hogwarts. He and Hermione had been there for Scorpius's birthday parties, and Draco had taught him to ride a broom and how to tie his school tie. Scorpius knew he could come to Draco for anything. Hermione shook her head at Ron. You can't let that one oversight get you down, Ron. It didn't define your career. It was a small misstep, and you would have had no way to know what was about to happen. And besides, now you're going on a different career path that you enjoy so much more. It's true, said Ron. I always thought being an Auror would be catching a new bad guy every week, but there's a lot more paperwork and bureaucracy than I expected. Running the shops has been much more gratifying. Ginny squeezed Ron's arm supportively and walked away to check on Albus, who was in a deep discussion with Harry further down the platform. Parvati did not just go see her grandmother one last time, Ron blurted out, the emotions of the moment clearly overcoming him as his voice cracked. She said she needed a break from us, from me. It's been almost a month. Why don't you go down and visit her? Take a few weeks. George and Angelina have the joke shops under control, and Oliver and Violetta have the pubs well in hand. You aren't expanding into the continent until next April. We'll keep Hugo with us, whilst you're in India. You know how much Cyrus enjoys having him around.
Ron thought for a moment. Yeah, I might take you up on that.
The whistle sounded, and Lily and Hugo raced up to her and Ron as Albus jumped onto the train steps. Hermione turned a bit away and saw Draco re-emerge from the barrier of platform 9 3/4. He stood a short distance away, not wanting to intrude, but Hermione broke away from Ron and went to join him.
Hugo's going to come and stay with us for a couple of weeks or so, if that's okay.
Draco pulled her into his side.
Weasley's going to go and try to win her back, then. Good. It's about time. Sometimes you've got to fight for the one you love.
Hermione smiled up into his beautiful silver eyes, and ran a hand through his perfectly toused blonde hair. "It'll be nice, and it'll give us a chance to see if we can actually handle 4 children at once."
Draco chuckled. "Well, whether we can or not, we're going to have to, soon enough."
He placed a hand protectively at her waist and bent down to kiss the top of her head.
"Speaking of the children, how did this morning go? Did Nana and Lucky make it in time for Finkel's send-off? I'm sorry I had to miss it, but I paid my respects at the fishbowl earlier."
Hermione hid a smile. "How are your plumbing spells?" she asked.
"Are plumbing spells a thing?"
he asked seriously. "Well, you were the one that dated Moaning Myrtle, you tell me."
Draco huffed. "We didn't date, my. She merely asked me to spend eternity together with her."
She laughed and turned her face up to his. He tipped his head down and slotted his lips over hers, basking in the warm glow of their love, certain and confident and strong. They broke apart, and she looked over at the tight little knot of their friends. Ron, blowing kisses to his little girl. Ginny, wiping away the bittersweet tears as she sent 2 sons off for the first time. And Harry, looking slightly abashed at all the attention that was focused on him from the train windows full of children, the attention that followed him everywhere in the wizarding world. The train rounded a corner and disappeared into the misty haze of an autumnal fog. Ginny whispered something quietly to Harry, and he smiled slightly and touched his forehead, fingertips grazing the scar that was barely visible anymore. Hermione waved to the group of 5 gathered there, and turned to her wizard, copper eyes flashing warmly as they met his silver ones. "I'm tired. Take me home, love," she said, with a languid smile.
Draco raised an eyebrow and smirked at her. "Which? I thought you'd never ask."
He leaned in to kiss her just below her left ear, his warm breath tickling her skin delightfully. They twisted together, apparating away to their home, their children, their family, and their life together. All was well.
I hope you enjoyed The Handkerchief by Great78. Thank you for listening. Please check out my other works on Archive of Our Own. My other podfics can be found on Archive of Our Own or on the Spotify channel Silver and Copper.